The year is roughly 1200 BCE. Halfway across the world, the Trojan War is being fought. In Egypt, Ramesses II has just died. In Shang Dynasty China, oracle bones are being carved on the North China Plain, and according to every history book written before 1986, that was the only Chinese civilization that mattered. But 1,200 kilometers southwest of the Shang capital, hidden behind the mountains of Sichuan, another civilization was at its peak. It had walled cities the size of 3.6 square kilometers, bigger than the Shang capital of Yingsu. It had bronze foundries casting objects no one in the world had ever attempted. It had gold-working techniques that wouldn't appear in northern China for another 1,000 years. This was the Shu Kingdom. Chinese chronicles mentioned it as a half-mythical place ruled by kings with names like Kangkang, the Silkworm Bush King, said to have eyes that protruded from his face. Han Dynasty historians dismissed Shu as legend. The poet Li Bai wrote in the 8th century that the road to Shu is harder than the road to heaven, and that Shu's history was lost in mist 48,000 years deep. He was right about the mist. He was wrong about the legend. Kangkang was real, and his city was buried under a brick factory. Here is what nobody talks about. The bronzes pulled from Sanxingdui's sacrificial pits do not look Chinese. They do not look like anything else from the Bronze Age world. The signature artifact is a bronze mask 1 meter wide. The eyes are not carved. They are cylindrical stalks that protrude 16 centimeters from the face. The ears flare outward like wings. The mouth is a thin, knowing line that stretches almost from ear to ear. There are dozens of these masks. Some are covered in gold leaf. And this is the part that broke archaeology, gold foil hammered to a thickness of less than 1/10 of a millimeter, applied with a lacquer adhesive that the Shang Chinese would not invent for another 800 years. There is a bronze statue 2.62 meters tall, weighing 180 kilograms, depicting a figure in 3 layered robes whose hands are wrapped around something invisible, possibly an elephant tusk, since 67 elephant tusks were buried in the same pit. There is a bronze tree 3.96 meters tall with 9 branches, 9 birds, and a dragon coiling down its trunk. In Shu mythology, this tree connected the underworld, the world of the living, and the realm of the gods. None of this matches Shang's style. None of this matches any Chinese style. The protruding eyes appear nowhere else in East Asia until you reach masks worn 4,000 kilometers away in ancient Tibet. The bronze technique uses tin and lead ratios different from any Shang foundry. For decades, fringe writers claimed aliens. The truth is stranger, these were Chinese people. They just weren't the Chinese we were told existed. Around 1100 BCE, something went catastrophically wrong in Sanxingdui. The 2 original pits discovered by farmer Yang Yungsan while digging a ditch in March 1929 and properly excavated in July and August 1986 tell a violent story. The bronzes were not gently placed. They were deliberately broken. Heads were snapped from bodies. Trees were smashed. Then the fragments were burned. Archaeologists found ash layers and scorched bones from cattle, pigs, and possibly humans, and finally buried in pits oriented to the cardinal directions. This was not a tomb. This was an execution of objects. In 2019, 6 new pits were discovered. By 2022, archaeologists had pulled out another 13,000 artifacts. The same pattern: smashed, burned, buried. Whatever happened in Sanxingdui, an entire kingdom decided that its sacred objects had to die. Then the people walked away. Not all at once. Pollen records and settlement evidence show the city was abandoned over decades. They moved 40 kilometers south to a site called Jinsha, where they kept making art for another 500 years, but the protruding eye masks vanished. The bronze giants vanished. Whatever religious system demanded those forms had been rejected by its own believers. Why? Theories range from a flood, the Min River shifted course around this time, to internal religious revolution to invasion by a Shang vassal. The leading theory in Chinese archaeology today is the most human one. There was a civil war between 2 priesthoods, and the losing side's gods were ritually murdered. Let's separate evidence from speculation. We know the dates. Carbon-14 dating places Sanxingdui's peak between roughly 1600 and 1100 BCE. The city walls were built between 1750 and 1500 BCE. We know the population based on settlement size and food storage capacity. Somewhere between 20,000 and 30,000 people lived inside the walls. That made Sanxingdui one of the 10 largest cities on Earth in 1300 BCE. We know they traded. The cowrie shells found in the pits, over 4,600 of them, came from the Indian Ocean, more than 3,000 kilometers away. The jade came from Xinjiang, 2,500 kilometers north. The ivory came from elephants that lived in Sichuan's then warmer forests. Sanxingdui sat on a trade network that stretched from India to Inner Asia, centuries before the Silk Road. We know they had no writing. This is the wound at the heart of the mystery. Despite excavating since 1986, archaeologists have found exactly 0 inscriptions, 0 tablets, 0 oracle bones. Either the Shu wrote on materials that rotted, wood, silk, bamboo, or they ran a complex urban civilization with no script at all. Either possibility rewrites what we thought we knew about literacy and state formation. What we do not know is everything else. We don't know what they called themselves. We don't know who they worshipped. We don't know the names of any of their kings, except those preserved as legends in chronicles written 1,500 years after the fact. The Shu took their language with them when they walked into the mist. Here is the lesson Sanxingdui forces on us. For 3,000 years, the official story of China was a single story, one river, one people, one unbroken thread from Yellow Emperor to today. That story was politically convenient. It justified central rule. It made every regional culture into a footnote, and it was wrong. Sanxingdui proves that Chinese civilization was never one civilization. It was many, intersecting, competing, sometimes erasing each other. This is not just ancient history. In 2021, when the new pits were unveiled on Chinese state television, more than 70 million people watched live. The discovery forced a public conversation about what China had always been, plural, not singular. Provinces that had been reduced to footnotes started funding their own archaeology. New cultures keep emerging: Liangzhu, Shimao, Erlitou, each one rewriting the textbook a little more. The pattern is not unique to China. Every nation builds itself a clean origin story. Egypt erases Nubia. Greece erases Minos. Rome erases the Etruscans. England erases the Britons. The official version is always tidier than the truth, and the truth is always buried under someone's brick factory. Sanxingdui's lesson is simple. Whatever foundational story you have been told about your civilization, your country, your culture, there is a city under it. There are masks in the dirt. There are people who lived complete lives and worshipped complete gods who were written out of the record because they lost. And the only reason we know they existed at all is that some of them refused to disappear quietly. CTA 30 seconds. If you want more lost civilizations, smashed gods, and the history that survived through accident, subscribe to History Unscripted. Every week we dig up the empires the textbooks forgot. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment below. Do you think the Shu burned their own gods, or did someone else do it for them? History is full of stories like this one. Most are still in the ground. Outro 30-45 seconds. Here is the final revelation. In 2022, archaeologists studying one of the new bronze masks found something nobody expected. A tiny, almost invisible inscription pressed into the inner rim. 3 marks, possibly numerical, possibly the beginning of writing. If those 3 marks are confirmed as a script, every history book in the world will have to add a paragraph. Literacy in China did not begin with the Shang oracle bones. It began with a kingdom we still cannot name, in a city that buried its own gods, on a river that changed course and washed it all away. And somewhere right now, under a parking lot or a wheat field or a brick factory, the next Sanxingdui is still waiting. The textbooks are not finished being wrong.